A Certain Scientific Railgun is a show I always found myself coming back to, especially now that all 3 seasons are now dubbed, and it has a little special place in my heart because it was one of my first starting anime. So A Certain Scientific Railgun is a spin-off show of the A Certain Magical Index series. Honestly, between the two, I honestly prefer the Certain Scientific Railgun because it's way more emotional and more slow-paced than the Certain Magical Index. In the Certain Scientific Railgun, I almost cried a couple times and questioned some of my humanity, where in the Certain Magical Index, it was really hard just to keep track what the fuck was going on, and half the time, I wasn't getting emotionally invested. I was just trying to keep up with the freaking story. For example, there's a part in the 2nd season of A Certain Scientific Railgun that coincides with part of the 1st season of A Certain Magical Index, where it's the same arc, but in A Certain Magical Index, that one arc lasts 5 episodes, where in A Certain Scientific Railgun, it lasts for 17 episodes. Where it gave the storyline a lot more breathing room and actually got me like 10 times more emotionally invested than in A Certain Magical Index. If this isn't which series you should watch first, there is an actual online timeline for that, made by a random website that I'll probably link in the description. This is an anime dub recommendation for the Railgun series. So the first thing I really love about the Railgun series is that it's writing. Like, I never noticed bad writing until I watched the 1.5-hour documentary of why Ruby is bad, which I will put in a card. But watching that made me realize how good other anime's writing is. Like, in the first half of the first episode, the world is explained in a really nice, simple way that is really manageable and really well paced. Plus, it also helps that the show is rooted in science. Like, when they're talking about frictional coefficients, I know exactly what they're talking about. When they're talking about vectors, I know exactly what they're talking about. When they're talking about Coulomb's law of magnetism, I know exactly what they're talking about because they're all real world scientific things. And don't worry if you don't know these things. I didn't know what 11 dimensions means, but you know, I still understood her power. It also helps that their power system had a numerical system. Like, I know a level 5 is stronger than a level 0. Besides the great world building and the amazing power system, the 4 main girls that the story focuses on were characterized really nicely within the first episode. Like, I feel like I know their main quirk and how they each react in a certain situation. And I didn't notice this the first time watching through casually, but then when I rewatched it, I realized each of the girls go through significant character development throughout the series. And it was just amazing to realize that. Besides loving the exposition, I actually really love the format that the show goes with. And this goes with both A Certain Scientific Railgun and A Certain Magical Index, where both shows have this mystery that's slowly getting solved throughout the course of the arc. And honestly, this goes for both shows. I'm actually really impressed on how fresh each mystery comes along. You'd think it would get like really stale after a while, but it doesn't. It manages to stay fresh and relevant and some kind of build off the former. Like, there was no time when I was watching the show, I was thinking, oh man, here we go again. But I feel A Certain Scientific Railgun does it better just because it has way more breathing room with its slower pacing and actually puts in emotional elements in it with the added breathing room. Also, in A Certain Scientific Railgun, the mysteries were actually really tangible to grasp on the concepts. Like, they talk about synesthesia in the first arc, which is something thoroughly explained in the show, and I actually made a lot of sense in how the world works. Then, in A Certain Magical Index, I just couldn't get what the fuck was going on at certain points because it was all magic and I couldn't like grasp on the general concept of it. They talk about Aztecs and religion and the Puritan church and I'm like, bro, I don't know any of this. And not only a certain scientific railgun has all these great things going for it, it also has really great fight scenes. And I'm not talking about the general choreography, even though that is pretty good too. Since it's rooted in science, all the fight scenes are so intellectual. Like it uses a ton of science and a ton of strategy. It honestly feels like watered down Shikamaru fighting in Naruto with more emphasis on science than strategy. I mean, not everyone can be a tactical genius like Shikamaru. Lastly, what I love about the show is how it intertwines with a certain magical index. No matter how biased I am for liking Railgun more, if you watch the shows simultaneously, you get great moments from some characters from the Railgun series, not so much the other way around. And some things in Railgun can only be explained in Index and vice versa. I mean, this is a Railgun dub anime recommendation. I do kind of suggest to go with kind of a soft order starting off with Railgun, and I'll put that in a video card above and in the description, or the true chronological order from that random anime website that'll also have in the description. But if you like a mystery-based show with a ton of science and amazing fight scenes with tons of strategy in them and emotional stories, I think you'll really like this show, and I would highly recommend you watch it.